We are going to go to our next great guest, a good friend of this show, Professor Richard Wolff. But just to give his bio, Professor Richard Wolff, he is economic emeritus, University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and a visiting professor in the graduate program of international affairs of the New School University in New York City. He's founder of Democracy at Work. Fantastic show, by the way. In fact, I was watching a few of your shows to prepare for this interview. Democracy at Work, host of the nationally syndicated show Economic Update. His latest book includes The System is the Sickness When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself. Professor, welcome to the show. How you doing? You doing okay this morning?
Yes, I am, and I'm glad to be talking with you.
I want to show you a clip, and I want to get your take on this clip. I think this is a perfect portrayal of reality. I think it's absolutely dead on. But I want to get your esteemed point of view on whether or not it is.
All right, Vladimir, if you don't end that war in Ukraine in 50 days, I'm going to do something very strong.
Oh, God, this again. Okay, right, cool.
What's that? Cool? I'll show you cool. Now you have 10 days. Okay, maybe 12.
Love it. Can't wait.
Okay, that's it.
Ow! Holy shit! Why did you hit me? Why did you hit me?
Look, somebody's going to pay the price for Vladimir not listening to me, and it's not going to be me, all right?
But he is also helping Russia. More than I'd like to, less than I could.
Yeah.
Trump has put 50% sanctions, or tariffs, as he wants to call it, on India. He has not done this to China, by the way. And part of the reason and rationale for doing this is, A, we don't want you buying somebody else's oil. Because we would prefer sometimes to sell you oil, but we definitely don't want you buying from the Russians. The Russians are in a war that we're trying to, quote unquote, stop, despite the fact that we started it, we perpetuate it. Trump could always walk away. But it's India's or apparently Modi's war. Also, we don't like the fact that you're buying Russian weapons. We don't like the fact that you're not opening up your agriculture markets, which is going to destroy your agricultural markets. We don't like these things. So here's 50% tariffs on your country. What stage of capitalism is this? I find it to be outrageous.
I don't want you to think of me as beating that proverbial dead horse, but I'm going to do it again. These are symptoms of a dying empire. It can't get the world to behave in the way it needs and wants. And so, like a petulant child, let me say that again, like a petulant child, you hit out at whoever you can get to be within the range of your little hand. That's what we got.
Yeah.
Modi is less powerful in the world than is Xi Jinping. That's what's going on. And Modi is less powerful, at least at this moment, than Russia itself, because Russia has shown the West that it has a military far more powerful than they thought it had. And so, it's a little bit like waking up one day a few months ago, as you and I did, to discover that those very nice people in Canada are our enemy now, or that the people in Mexico, remember how we began? They're all rapists. They're all crooks. They're all, what? What are you doing? Let me drive it home. India is now the largest country on earth by population. They outgrew China, which used to be. China and India, whose leaders are meeting as we speak now. They're all gathering in Beijing with Russia and with enough leaders that we're talking about a meeting of leaders who represent more than half the people on this planet. The United States, 330 million of us, we represent altogether 4.5% of the population of this planet. You got it? 4.5% here, over 50% over there, led by India. You know what this is? This is a very dumb mouse trying to bite a large elephant. And this is stupid beyond words. Why are you doing this? What in the Russia is selling arms to India. Let me remind everybody, you know how long that's been going on? Many decades. That's not something new. That's not something extraordinary. And since Russia sold weapons to India, India in return sold things to Russia. That's what international trade is. If you say to the Indians, you can't buy Russian oil, and I would remind everyone, if you don't know, Russia discounts the oil it sells to India. India gets a really good deal. India is a poor country trying desperately to escape the poverty that has dogged it from the horrors of being a colony of Britain. So if you don't let them buy discounted oil from Russia, and they can't get that discount from anyone else, you're hobbling India's economic development by making it pay more for energy. I mean, this is an assault on the number one priority that the Indian government has committed itself to achieve to its own people, which is the most rapid economic development possible for us. Why should the Indian government, representing over 1 billion people that live there, 1.4, I believe, billion, why should they allow a foreign government that they're not at war with to hobble their economic development because Mr. Trump wants to appear to be a tough guy heaving tariffs at everybody in the world? And I want to remind everyone one more thing. Nobody else in the world is heaving tariffs at everybody. No one. We are the only country smiting the world with our tariffs. And you know what that means? The whole world has a reason to be angry, bitter, and looking for ways to avoid dealing with this rogue nation, to avoid a dependency on anything having to do with the United States, because in the view of the rest of the world, this country's out of control and may hurt you as it flails around. It's a little bit like the instruction I remember getting when I was a young man and was looking for a job as a lifeguard. And I was taught by the local instructors at the YMCA that if there's a person out there drowning, you got to approach him in this way, not that way, because drowning people, are gesticulating wildly. And if you're not careful, they'll take you down with them. They don't mean that, but they are desperate. That's what we are. We are a society, and the whole world is looking to make deals. This weekend in Beijing, China, the leaders of more than 50% of this planet are going to be discussing, among their other topics, how we can work together to get around the damage that this weird Mr. Trump is imposing on the rest of the world. And they're not unaware that as Mr. Trump is doing that, no one inside the United States seems to be holding them back. And they're all noticing. The big banks in New York, they're not saying anything. The big corporations that they deal with, they're not saying anything. They may not like what Mr. Trump is doing. They may see the dangers, but they're politically nowhere. And that means you got to worry if you're Indian or Chinese or Indonesian or Nigerian or Paraguayan. You got to worry that something has cracked, something has really changed inside the United States. And from being the world's protector, the world's umpire, they're becoming the world's biggest rogue, dangerous place. And I can see it already all over the world. I study that stuff. I read foreign newspapers every day. It is amazing what's happening. The only thing more amazing is the denial inside the United States that that's what's going on.
Yeah, I guess denial. You see a few financial channels that point out this doesn't seem to be in our best interest, but there's no political. Yeah, but there's no political push for what Donald Trump is effectively doing at all. He's effectively.
I think the Democratic Party is telling the people of this country, we're busy somewhere else. We got something else to do. We're going to fight an election next year. Look, much of the rest of the world is debating whether there will be an election in the United States next autumn. You know, Mr. Zelensky, as Mr. Putin likes to point out, Mr. Zelensky, his term was up last year. He forbade elections. This is a man who's doing, when we are busily arming and funding somebody who is not willing to risk what would happen if he put his people in a position of voting in secret about this war.
Yeah.
And the best guess of most people on both sides is that he'd lose. And you couldn't pursue the war anymore because he would have lost. So he won't have that. Well, Mr. Trump may be in the same position. If he keeps losing in the polls, which he has been doing, and we get closer to next November, what will he have to lose? Not much. Yeah. And if he's willing to send endless arms to Ukraine and endless arms to Israel, even as the rest of the world, including U.S. allies, refer to what Israel is doing in Gaza as a genocide, why are we surprised that he's now willing to send troops into D.C. or Chicago or New York or L.A., etc., etc.? It's always that way. It's what the phrase that was invented, the chicken's coming home to roost. The man who sends guns everywhere, the man who funds what the Israelis are doing to children in Gaza, and then says he wants the war in Ukraine to end because people are dying. You know, that is so crazy that the whole world is saying, wait a minute. We got to stop dealing with the United States. That's what they're discussing all over Europe, let alone Asia, Africa, and Latin America. They are realizing that dealing with the United States now requires a change, because the cozy, few years Republican, a few years Democrat that we had since the end of World War II, great stability, foreigners put their money here because nothing scary happens here. Everything is very orderly. That's over. And we're only in the earliest stages of the rest of the world figuring out how to get around, how to undo, how to block the United States. And we're all going to be living through all of that. And it's not going to be pretty. And the people at the top of the United States, they're going to figure out how to hold on to theirs as the excrement flies into the cooling equipment. But the rest of us, we're going to pay the price. We already are. That's why we just learned we can't get vaccines for COVID unless we fill in some idea that Robert Kennedy has about what we should or shouldn't get. We used to have the choice, get a COVID vaccine, don't get one. Mr. Kennedy took away the choice. That's what he just did.
Yeah.
I'm over 65. I'll get my COVID shot. But for people who aren't, and it turns out now with the government doing that, the insurance may or may not cover the $140 you can be charged for a COVID shot. Come on, this is now life and death. And why is Mr. Kennedy in that position? Is he a doctor? No. Did he get there by being a candidate of doctors? No. You know why he's in that position? To take away my rights to a vaccine? Because he sold his votes to Mr. Trump to get Trump elected, and Mr. Trump had to pay putting him in that job. That's his credential. That's why he's in a position to determine my health, because he sold votes. By the way, and why did he have votes? Because of him? Not at all. Because of the name Kennedy. We used to have a president named Kennedy, and it has a kind of magic name. And Mr. Trump, who only won by 1.5% of the vote, needed everyone he could get. So he'd give away his grandmother. He probably did. You know, this is, yeah, I know we laugh, but, you know, it's that old saying, which I believe comes from Paul Robeson, one of the great singers of American history.
That's right.
That's old spiritual, I believe. You laugh to keep from crying.
Right. Speaking of another professional that Donald Trump hired in the job, in this case in trade, this is Peter Navarro. This is Peter Navarro. And he is having a conversation talking about the trade thing that India has. I want to get your take on this. This is Navarro, expert, quote unquote, in finance.
Is Ukraine comes to us in Europe and says, give us some more money. So everybody in America loses because of what India is doing. The consumers and businesses and everything lose, and workers lose because India's high tariffs cost us jobs and factories and income and higher wages. And then the taxpayers lose because we got to fund Modi's war, okay? The road to peace runs at least partly right through New Delhi. Modi's war.
Let me ask
because
you
I love how the announcer, very pliable, is like, wait, you mean Putin's war? No, Modi's war. Because somehow Modi is responsible for the war that the U.S. started when it overthrew the government in 2014.
Well, Mr. Navarro, like me, is a professional economist. And all I can tell you is he is an inspiration for the famous remark, not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But I don't, you know, he's a small fry. He's a little Trump that the big Trump found to go and, you know, to bite the ankles of the people who visit the White House. I get it. I understand that it's sad, but there it is. But I want to deal with the substance. The United States has a deficit with a country. It doesn't matter what country it is. Could be India, could be Vietnam, could be China. Let's make sure we all understand what the deficit is. It means that we buy more from them than they buy from us. Okay? That's all it means. When Mr. Trump gets up there with his chart, or he has his little doggy Navarro get up there with a chart and say, well, we're running a deficit, which is going to look at how much these people are selling to us, and we're buying more from them, and then he blames them. He blames India and Vietnam that we buy more from them than they buy from us. But let's be clear, and I'm speaking now really to my fellow Americans. The reason we buy more from Vietnam, nobody's holding a gun to our head. No one said to any of you, go out this morning and buy an Indian product or I'll hurt you. Not at all. We bought those things from Vietnam, those shirts at the Walmart, or those pots and pans at Target. We went and bought those things because we want them.
Yes.
That's what. And we're a rich country. You know what? Rich countries can do that. Poor countries. Vietnam can't buy from the United States because Vietnam is a poor country. We buy more from Vietnam because we are a rich country. Only in Mr. Trump's, how shall I say this, remarkable brain would you blame the Vietnamese for not buying more. It's as if Mr. Trump went on the radio and said on the television, I'm very angry at America's poor people. You are not buying enough. And the poor people would look quizzically at this moron and say, we'd love to buy more. We don't have any money because you don't pay us. So the blaming other countries, particularly poor ones, and India remains a poor country, very big, but very poor. They don't have the money. That's why they run a deficit. You can't blame them that they don't have more money. If you want them to have more money, pay them more for what you do buy from them. This is unbelievable stupidity, blaming deficits on the people over there. We, the Americans, are the ones buying. There's a deficit because we buy a lot. And why do we do that? Because we have a lot of money. Not all of us, obviously, but as a society as a whole. I thought we were supposed to be proud of it. Now, we're not only ripping the world off, that's part of why we're so rich, but we follow up, having ripped off the wealth from the rest of the world, by blaming them for not having enough to buy more of our stuff. Man, you wonder, you think the world is going to tolerate this for very long? You wouldn't, and they're not going to either.
One last question on this. Why do you think he's doing this? I mean, is there a domestic reason? Like, I guess my thought is associated with the debt. I mean, we are, $37 trillion in debt at this point. That's not including money that's going to come from the big, beautiful bill, because once that kicked in, he pushed back some of the provisions to after the election because he didn't want that stuff to hit the balance sheet immediately. There are estimates that that's going to be several trillions of dollars just right off the bat.
Well, I think what the answer to your question is, Mr. Trump has found the key to political success at this moment in American history. And that key is to find a scapegoat for the real problems that this American economy now has. I'm going to be real blunt with you because we don't have much time. But over the last 30 years, the corporate sector in America has made an enormous profit by doing three things at the same time. Number one, replacing workers with machines, computers, robots, AI. Number two, moving production overseas where you can get away with paying people way less than you pay them here in the United States. And number three, bringing in cheap immigrants to work. Those are the three things corporations did. And they did it to replace the most expensive workers they had, who were, because of our culture, white, male manufacturing workers. They were the most unionized, they were the most powerful, they got the highest wages. So they replaced them by moving abroad, by getting a machine, or bringing in an immigrant. So that part of America, white, male, working class men, are bitter and angry. And nobody helped them. Republicans didn't help them. The Democrats didn't help them. Why? Because Republicans and Democrats depend on donations from the companies that were doing that. They weren't going to help those workers. They were busy helping the companies. Along comes Mr. Trump and says, I'll fix it. I'll stick it to the immigrants. I'll stick it to minorities in America, and we all are watching that unfold, aren't we? I'm the bad foreigners, the bad Chinese. I'm the tough guy. I'm going to fix it. Look, it's a long shot. I mean, if you talk to those workers, they'll tell you, I don't know if he can pull that off, but I know that the conventional politicians in the Republican and Democratic Party showed me for 30, 40 years they couldn't or wouldn't do anything. So I'm going with this weird guy. That's what I'm doing. And so he's weird. Why is he weird? Because look, he's the president. He got into the White House waving this kind of scapegoat flag. And he's doing it with the immigrants every day. Now he's going to make up crime in the city, and he's going to go after that. And then he's going to go after Mr. Modi. Anybody he can throw into the pot, that's his recipe. And you shouldn't be surprised because it's working. He's the president. The New York Times knows it's crazy, but writes as if it isn't. You know, it'll keep going, Jamal. It really will. It'll keep going until it can't work anymore. And then it will fall apart. And you and I will be talking on this program about how fast the house of cards just fell down.
Professor Richard Wolff, thank you for this. Always appreciate your voice, man. I always do. Professor Richard Wolff, he's professor of economics emeritus at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, a visiting professor at the graduate program in international affairs at the New School University in New York City. He's founder of Democracy at Work, host of their nationally syndicated show, Economic Update. His latest book is The System is the Sickness When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself. And you can find that book with his other books, Understanding Socialism and Understanding Marxism, at www.democracy.info. Professor, you always have my thanks. Thank you for this. You be safe.
You too. Thank you.
Alrighty.